Like any large organization, the South African Defence Force developed a language all of their own. It was a strange mixture of Afrikaans, English, slang, and military jargon that few outside of the military could hope to understand. Some of the terms were humorous, some were clever, while others were downright crude. Here are some of those that were common. 1 mil. One military hospital in Pretoria was usually referred to as 1 mil. There was also 2 mil in Cape Town and 3 mil in Bloemfontein. 101 Circus. 101 Specialized Unit, or 101 Spes, was located at Oshavelo. Because they used horses and motorcycles to patrol, they were given the derogatory nickname of 101 Circus. ARPCOS. Anyone that served at one parachute battalion in Bloemfontein will remember the ARPCOS. It was used to simulate exiting from an aircraft. Many said that it was more scary than jumping from an actual plane. The word ARPCOS is Afrikaans for ape cage. Ack Ack. This was a nickname for anti-aircraft. During World War II, anti-aircraft batteries were known as Ack Ack batteries. This came from the old phonetic alphabet where A was Ack. Adjutant. The adjutant, or Adj, was usually an officer who was in charge of the administration of a unit. AFB. This stood for Air Force Base. Afkak. An afkak was a form of punishment, usually in the form of extended PT session or a route march. It's an Afrikaans expression meaning to shut off. APC. Armored Personnel Carrier. Audie Murphy. A term used to describe someone that took uncalculated risks. The term originated with Audie Murphy, a highly decorated American World War II veteran who later became a major Hollywood movie star. AWOL. This stood for Absent Without Leave. The SADF took a dim view on troops that went AWOL. If caught, you could expect to spend some time in the detention barracks. Bulky. A coloured bar that was worn beneath the cap badge of the beret. It denoted the wearer's corps of service. Balsak. A slang expression for the large brown kit bag that was issued to SADF troops. It is an Afrikaans term for ball bag or scrotum. Bat. The nickname for a member of the parachute battalion. It is the shortened version of parabat. Battery acid. A slang term given to the concentrated cool drink that was included in the ration pack and mixed with water. Bivvy. A plastic ground sheet. 2 bivvies are joined together to form a 2-man shelter. Black is beautiful. The name given to the black cream that was used to camouflage the face and the hands. It was easy to apply, difficult to remove. Blowgat. An expression used to describe a national serviceman who had reached the midway point of his initial national service. It is an Afrikaans word literally meaning blue arse. Blowjob. A slang expression for a member of the South African Air Force. It refers to the color of their uniform. Blow is the Afrikaans word for blue. Bokop. A slang term for a member of the infantry corps. It is derived from the Afrikaans word buckhead. The emblem of the infantry was a buck's head that was worn on the beret and on the lapel of the dress uniform. At a later stage, each infantry battalion developed their own unique cap badge. Bombs. A shortened term for bombardier. This rank was unique to the artillery corps and was equal to that of a corporal. The border. This is a term used for the operational area in the then Southwest Africa. Bossies. A slang term for someone who was suffering from dementia due to being in the bush for too long. The name was shortened from the Afrikaans word bosbefok, which means bushfucked. Brake shoes. A slang term used to describe Pro Vita biscuits. Brown Navy. A term used to describe the South African Navy's Marines. The Marines had the prime responsibility of protecting naval bases, although they did service in the operational area as well. They were called the Brown Navy because they wore the normal brown neutral uniform of the SADF, as opposed to the Blue Navy, who were the seafaring element of the Navy. Browns. The term used to describe the brown neutral uniform worn by the Army, Air Force, medics and Marines. Browns normally came in 2 sizes, too big or too small. Biffle. Developed and produced locally, the Biffle was a mine-resistant armored personnel carrier used by the SADF. Buffel is the Afrikaans word for buffalo. Bungalow Bill. When troops stayed in a bungalow or dormitory, one of them would often be put in charge. Although he had no official rank, he would be given the title Bungalow Bill. Camper. Members of citizen force units would be called up for military duty each year for a period of between 1 and 3 months. These were known as camps, so naturally anyone doing a camp would be known as a camper. Casevac. Casualty evacuation. When a soldier was wounded, the aim was to remove them from the combat area for medical assistance as quickly as possible. Alouette 3 and Puma helicopters were normally used for this. Often there would be a doctor or ops medic on board. Casper. An armoured personnel carrier originally developed for and used by the South African Police, it was later used by the SADF as well. The word Casper comes from the joint designers of the vehicle, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, or CSIR, and the South African Police, SAP. It was the vehicle favoured most by the police anti-terrorist unit, Kofut. CB. Confined to barracks, a form of punishment for minor offences. CF. Citizen Force. After completing an initial period of national service, you would then be posted to a citizen force unit. For the next 12 years, you could expect to be called up for between 1 and 3 months every year. These call-ups are known as camps. CF units would often spend a 3-month camp on the border. Chicken Parade. Basically a clean-up of an area, picking up papers, cigarette butts and general refuse. The troops would be bobbing up and down like chickens pecking for food. In the Navy, this was known as skirmishing. Civvy. A term used to denote a civilian or a civilian item. For example, when a troop was on pass, he would be in Civvy Street, and he could wear civvies or civilian clothing. Clearing in. On arrival at a new unit, you were expected to clear in. This was so that they could take you onto their strength. You received a form, and it had to be signed by just about everyone of importance in the unit. It normally included the adjutant, the RSM, the chaplain, paymaster, welfare officer, sickbay, stores, weapons store, and a list of others. The word comes from the Afrikaans, inklaar. Clearing out. This was the opposite to clearing in, and was done when you left a unit. You were given a clearing out form, and it had to be signed by all those that had originally cleared you in. They made sure that you had handed back any equipment that you had drawn, and that you didn't owe any money to the mess. It comes from the Afrikaans word, uitklaar. Clutch plate. The slang term given to hamburger patties. CO. Candidate officer. These were people who had been or were on an officer's course but had yet to be commissioned. They wore a white tab on each shoulder. The Afrikaans for CO was KO, or Kandidaat Offizier, but troops would joke that the KO stood for Kakhuis Offizier, which translates as shithouse officer. Coin. This stood for counterinsurgency. Troops that served in the operational area would receive extensive training in counterinsurgency warfare. Comsen. Communications Center. Comsens were usually manned by members of the Signals Corps. Contact. An engagement with an enemy force. In other armies, this is sometimes known as a firefight. Court-martial. If a member of the SADF was charged with a serious offence or contravention of the military disciplinary code, they could face the court-martial. The court-martial would then hold a trial and then sentence the guilty party. A court-martial had the ultimate power to sentence a member of the SADF to death for offences such as desertion or treason. Cocker shop. A drinking house or shebeen common to Ovamba land in southwest Africa. Often they were little more than a hut or corrugated iron shack. You could sometimes buy normal alcohol from a cooker shop, but most of the time it was a homemade beer known as mahangu. Cooker shops were off limits to SADF troops. Not that it ever stopped any of them. The Cutline. A term used to describe the official border between southwest Africa and Angola. In Afrikaans it was known as die Kaplyn. DAC. A nickname given to the C-47 Dakota aircraft used by the South African Air Force. These workhorses have been around since World War II. Danger pay. An extra allowance paid to all members of the SADF for the duration of service in the operational area. DB, Detention Barracks, a military prison that was administered and run by the military police. The main DB was in Boksburg and went by the unlikely name of Cinderella. DD1. This stood for Defense Document 1. This was the form that was used for the purposes of laying a charge against any member of the SADF for any contravention of the military disciplinary code. Devil Dodger, a slang term for a military chaplain or padre. Dixies, 2 square aluminium containers which were kept in your webbing. They fitted inside each other and along with the fire bucket and pixel formed your eating kit when in the bush. They were used as plates or cooking pots. Dog Biscuits, a hard square biscuit that was common in ration packs. When mixed with water they would swell to form a type of porridge. The ever-present weevils were seen as an extra source of protein. Dog Tags, metal tags that were worn around the neck. They contained a person's name, serial number, religion, and blood group. Doiby, a name given to the plastic inner helmet that was worn on the inside of the old steel helmet. Troops would normally have to wear a doiby for the duration of their basic training. Drop Zone, an area where paratroops landed when they jumped from an aircraft. The word was often shortened to DZ. Eland, an armoured car used by the South African Defence Force. It was based on the lines of the French Panhard AML and was produced in 60mm Eland 60 and 90mm Eland 90 models. It was named after the eland antelope. Elephant Virgins, a slang term given to slices of polony. A few slices of cold polony and some cold baked beans was a common meal in the bush. Engine Mountings, a slang term given to tin braised steak. And while it may have been called steak, it was anything but. It was usually some type of processed meat. S-bits, fuel tablets that burn for a considerable length of time. In the bush, these were used to cook on. Sometimes, if you were lucky enough, you even had an S-bit stove. Normally, however, you dug a small hole, threw in a few S-bits, lit them, and then put your Dixie or fire bucket on top of it. Extras, extra duties. These were a form of punishment and could take the form of extra guard duties, a route march, or being chased around the obstacle course a few times. Extras are sometimes also called a dirty. FUBAR, the Popular Armed Forces for the Liberation of Angola, or Forças Armadas Populares de Libertação de Angola. FUBAR were the military wing of the MPLA and later became the official army of Angola. Fire bucket, the metal water bottle holder that was in the water bottle pouch. It had a folding handle and doubled as a cup, pot, and shaving dish. It held about half a litre and was often blackened with soot from being put over an open fire or on an S-bit pull. Fitter and turner, a derogatory nickname given to military chefs. It was said that they could fit food into a pot and then turn it into shit. Flossie, a slang term for the Hercules C-130 transport aircraft. Troops would usually fly to and from the border on C-130s operated by a company called SADF. FN. The FN, or Fabrique Nationale, was a 7.62mm Belgian-designed assault rifle that replaced the bolt-action 303 rifle used by the SADF. In turn, it was later replaced by the R1, a South African-manufactured copy of the weapon. 40 days. When conscripts had 40 days left of their national service, it was traditional to have a huge party to celebrate. This tradition originated during national service and was based on the Cliff Richard song, I'm gonna give you 40 days to get back. FUBAR, an acronym for fucked up beyond all recognition. A person, object, or situation could become FUBAR. Go-kart, a slang term for a 10 or 20 man field toilet. These were fiberglass shells with either 10 or 20 toilet seats and lids, which were placed over a hole dug in the ground. The box was mounted on wheels for easy movement. Gook, a term used by SADF troops for a terrorist. It was first used by the Americans in Vietnam as a term for the Viet Cong or any Vietnamese in general. GV, a term used to describe someone who was very enthusiastic. It was short for the Afrikaans grensvechter or border fighter. Jippo, a term used for avoiding work. Someone that was lazy or not pulling their weight was known as a jippo gat or jippo ass. You could also jippo something to make it work. Jippo guts, a slang term for diarrhea. This was often a problem with troops in the bush, especially new arrivals. It would take them some time to get used to the diet. Hairy back, a derogatory term for an Afrikaner. There was often animosity between English and Afrikaans speakers. Harde gat, someone who was stubborn or difficult to deal with. It's an Afrikaans word meaning hard-assed. HMG, heavy machine gun. This would include weapons such as a 12.7mm Browning heavy machine gun. Houding, an Afrikaans word meaning attitude. A person could have goeie houding, or good attitude, or slechte houding, bad attitude. Even something as mundane as a uniform could have attitude. Sy uniform het goeie houding. His uniform has good attitude. HQ, headquarters. Each unit would have a headquarters element. Defence Headquarters, or DHQ, was situated in Pretoria. IFV, Infantry Fighting Vehicle. The locally designed and manufactured Ratel was the prime IFV of the SADF. One South African Infantry Battalion, or 1SI, later went on to become a mechanized infantry battalion, making extensive use of the Ratel. Interflora, a derogatory term for the South African Chorus signals. The emblem of the winged figure of Eros was also used by the national florist Interflora. This is the South African Chorus signals cap badge, and this is the Interflora logo. Jam stealer, a derogatory term used by parabats for those not jump qualified. Basic parachute wings were awarded after completing 8 static line jumps. Jimmy, a slang term for a signaller or member of the SA Corps signals. Collectively they were referred to as Jimmies. Jol, an Afrikaans slang expression for a party or good time. The 3 B's were considered vital ingredients for a good jol: booze, braai or barbecue, and birds, females. Jolly patrollie, used to denote any excursion or activity regarded as fun. The literal translation from Afrikaans means jolly patrol. K-car, a nickname given to an Alouette 3 helicopter armed with twin light machine guns. In some K-cars, the light machine guns were replaced with a single 20mm cannon. The K stood for kill. The kas, the detention cells in a camp. Kas is an Afrikaans word that means cage or cupboard. Killick, the commonly used name for a leading seaman in the Navy. It was equal to the army rank of corporal. Killing ground, a designated area in an ambush where the heaviest enemy casualties were to be expected. As many of the enemy as possible had to be in the killing ground before the ambush was initiated. Lance Jack, a slang term for a lance corporal. Loot, a slang term for a lieutenant or second lieutenant in the Army, Air Force or medical services. You could get a 1-pip loot, which was a second lieutenant, or a 2-pip loot, who was a full lieutenant. Light duty, a term for a person who, for medical reasons, was temporarily exempt from any physical activity or labor. During basic training they had to wear a white doiby, and, when they marched from one point to another, had to make a noise like an ambulance siren. They were often referred to as the sick, lame and lazy. LMG, this stood for a light machine gun. LWT, the vehicle park or transport park. The LWT stood for a light workshop troop. LZ, a landing zone. For troops in the bush, an LZ was often an area you had to hack clear of trees and bush in order for a helicopter to land unexpectedly, for example, during Kazovacs. Mark Doet, a term used to signify the end of a smoke break. It is derived from the Afrikaans term extinguish, or literally make dead. Later, when smoking became non-PC, smoke breaks were changed to water breaks. Meat pie, a derogatory expression for an MP or military policeman. MiG-23, a slang expression for a mosquito, named after the Russian MiG jet fighter. A mosquito is also called a mozzie. Often the first thing you would hear in the morning is someone complaining, "Bliksemboet, the mozzie's charged me stikkend last night." The literal translation is, "Damn brother, last night I was bitten extensively by mosquitoes." Minda, an Afrikaans expression meaning few days. This was used by troops that only had a short time before they completed their national service. The closer the fingers were together, the less the number of days. Minda chips. This was a nickname for cornflakes breakfast cereal. Muraspada, a derogatory nickname for a military policeman or MP. It is Afrikaans for swamp frog. MPLA, Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola, or Movimento Popular de Libertação de Angola. The MPLA became the ruling government in Angola after independence. Mushroom, a term used among the officer corps to denote a second lieutenant. Like a mushroom, they were kept in the dark and fed on shit. That's it for part 1 of our SADF glossary. Click on the link below to watch part 2. Otherwise, you're only getting half of the story. Please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you have an essay or story that you would like to be featured on the channel, drop us an email in the link provided in the description below.